Hey everybody, Aaron Count, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Surefire X300 Turbo. The light wars continue. Finally, and I do say finally, we have a new contender from Surefire to provide us with what a lot of people have been asking for, I know myself included, for a very long time, more candela. And not just more candela from Surefire, I want more candela from everyone. If you're not familiar, and this is just kind of a brief overview, a lot of lights are marketed in the buzzword form as lumens. They say lumens, 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 lumens. So 1,000 lumens has become the benchmark for a lot of lights. Some lights are able to go beyond that, but lumens are just a measure of the available light that a weapon light's going to produce. Whereas candela is the intensity, and lux is how far that intensity goes. So candela has become, and when I say candela, if you think about a hot spot, you know how you see the light and it's the overall spill, and then there's a hot spot in the middle. That hot spot in the middle is your candela. And lux is how far that hot spot would go. And I know there might be some people who are like, well, actually, those are very broad definitions. This video is about the light, not about light, if that makes any sense. X300 Turbo is coming in at 650 lumens with 66,000 candela in the body that we are all familiar with. It's available in the A model and the B model. I got two of them in the A model. You'll see one of them in the B-roll popping up, but the review was pretty much just about one of them when I'm actually talking about which light I reviewed. The other one was just available, and it's an identical light, but as far as the review process, the 2,000 round review process, only one of the lights was tested. You probably noticed, like, wait, 650 lumens, doesn't the old X300 Ultra have 1,000 lumens? And you are correct, it does. However, when you bump up candela, you can bump down, and maybe should bump down, lumens to be able to get the hot spot that you want, because you only have so much available horsepower or voltage from your batteries. And there's exceptions, of course, but the general rule is you can only go X amount of lumens for every volt that you have. So this is a 6-volt system, 2 3-volt batteries. They are non-rechargeable, they are disposable batteries, so you are limited in how much output you're going to be able to get from them, as opposed to like an 18350 or an 18650, which is where you see 1,200, 1,500, 2,000 lumen lights being available with a lot of candela. So is bumping down the lumens to 650 going to be a big deal? I'll tell you right now, just getting into this light, the first 500 rounds of the get to know you phase, I still have a really good amount of spill, and that hot spot is excellent. Is it the greatest and the most penetrating, furthest reaching hotspot on the market? No, it's not. But it is a significant improvement over previous generations of Surefire, and it is a well-equipped contender for the other popular high lumen, high candela lights that are available. Now, some of you may be asking, why is candela important? Now, again, this video isn't about that, but I feel like it's worth mentioning why so much of us in the professional community have been asking for candela. And I've been asking for candela since I was a uniformed patrol officer with a Surefire, or I'm sorry, a Streamlight Stinger and an X300U, or actually it was just a straight up X300, the original 170 lumen unit. It was just all light, but it was not focused, not controlled, so it was very hard for me to use my light to see through other light, or to penetrate glass, tint, things like that. If I have something on the other side of a street light, or just adjacent to a headlight, or it's backlit by a storefront window, or backlit by the sun when I'm in a dark room, without candela, that lux, I'm not going to be able to get as much PID, positive identification, as I would want to get. So I, of course, you know, the catchphrase is all the lumens, but I'm also all about all the candela. And it's kind of like we're looking for a replacement for what the sun provides us. We're never going to get that, and we'd be arrogant to think so, and we'd probably end all of humanity if we actually did create something that was that powerful. But you get the point. Weapon lights are supposed to replace the ease of visual identification that we get during daylight, with an added degree of control, because we can turn the lights off and the lights are a little bit more focused, and they don't provide equal opportunity lighting. When used properly, a weapon light is good for you, not so good for the bad guys or the unknowns or the potential threats. Depending on situation, of course, I'm sure you can make up a scenario in your head where that wouldn't necessarily be true, because that's just how we like to do things. So when Surefire sat down, I'm sure, to decide if they were going to provide people with what they were asking for, because of course not everybody's asking for it, because not everybody comes from the same school of thought when it comes to weapon lights, and that's fine. It's okay to be wrong. You'll learn eventually. It's cool. I need candela because I can manage too much candela. I can't manage not enough candela. I can manage too many lumens. I can't manage not enough lumens. I want to bring as much horsepower as I can to the situation, because I can't predict the future. And if I use proper light techniques, the light is never too bright. Of course, there's exceptions to that. Probably shouldn't be using your weapon light to read IDs in a closet. That's why you carry a small little pin light. It's not a big deal. When it comes to weapon-specific things, like we're talking about, the Surefire X300 Turbo is a weapon light. It's not an administrative light in design. It's very well purposed to provide a reasonable hotspot, and that's something I really appreciated for it in that first 500 rounds to get to know you. Of course, I shot it a lot during the day because it was riding the gun, but functionality, of course, wasn't an issue there. There aren't too many changes to the body. The only significant change that I noticed, is besides obviously the internal, the reflector, is the older model Surefires had the ability to remove that small spacer on the back battery door if you needed to get the light closer to your trigger guard on your handgun. The new models do not have that. Because so many people didn't even know it existed, they just stopped putting it on there. The switching system remains the same. Up or down will give you constant. Pressing forward on the rear switch will give you momentary. I still wish Surefire had made slightly bigger switches on this newest generation, but the secondary market or the aftermarket has already taken care of that. Like Filster has Filster has switches that are available, and a few other people are making switches as well. So Surefire is probably like, you know what, if people want it, they can get it from them. We're not going to bother because, you know, making molding is an incurred cost that they probably weren't interested in. Getting directly into the burn down after that first 500 rounds, I already had to do a burn down on a handgun I was reviewing, so I went ahead and threw the X300 Turbo on my Atlas Aries for 500 rounds as quickly as I can shoot 500 rounds. Whole purpose of the burn down: will we notice any kind of issues that would arise in a short period of time with that round count that we wouldn't notice over a much longer period of time? 500 rounds in 4 to 5 minutes going to generate a whole lot more heat than 500 rounds in 4 to 5 hours, days, weeks, months, years. You know the boilerplate. So here's your burn down. First to last round, no issues. Just watching through the video myself, I didn't really see any flickering or fading, any issues that we have seen with lesser weapon lights when you actually start shooting with them. Some weapon lights are really only good for Instagram photos. The Surefire, at least at 1,000 rounds, was showing itself to be a Surefire weapon light, meaning if you got one that failed, buy a lottery ticket because you're in an extreme minority. And that's something I can definitely say about Surefire, regardless of how you feel about their light output or how long it takes them to get lights to market or how long it takes them to produce new products or how long it takes or how expensive the lights are. Reliability and durability have always been there. And at 1,000 rounds, I was seeing much the same with this X300 Turbo. Something that I definitely want to bring up. There was a time when the X300U, when it was a 600 lumen unit, shared the exact same head with the Scout light. Scout light took up a lot more real estate. So a lot of us figured out, well, if these lights are exactly the same, and Surefire was one of the best games at the time, we didn't have a lot of aftermarket options. People were like, why don't I just run this as my rifle light? Or why don't I just run this as my submachine gun light? Because it's the same exact light, same exact head, same exact voltage, and it takes up way less space. So that's what we did. We ran it on MP5s, we ran it on rifles, we ran it on any gun that had limited real estate, we could rhino mount that X300U, and it was a fantastic time to be alive because it was an ease of ergonomics and output, and just the light placement was just perfect. And then Surefire bumped up the lumens, changed the hot spots, the heads weren't no longer the same, other lights came out, other options were available, and that technique of rhino mounting a pistol light kind of fell by the wayside. I still had a gun or two that were set up that way, but they weren't really my focus. Guess what? Now I've got a hotspot that's rifle-ish. It's got some reach. So for certain guns where rail space is limited, I'm gonna go ahead and put that Rhino mounted light right back up there, or guns that have very limited rail space, like say a BNT TMP or TP9 or whatever you want to call it. It's very hard to get a light on that gun and have it be ergonomically accessible. If you got an MP5K, P90, PS90, Scorpion K, MCXK, sorry, MPXK, running a Rhino mounted or a 12 o'clock position pistol light, pretty beneficial. And you've got some serious candela to be able to still reach out and shoot targets at intermediate distances at the very least, because you have that extra throw that you didn't have with the previous generation of Surefire or most of the competitor lights. I know you're waiting, so we'll just go ahead and get right to it. Drop testing. I just kind of fell into drop testing things. My intent wasn't to say, hey, you know, if you drop your gun, what's going to happen? It was, hey, here's what constant to see what kind of shock they can take. And it came from optics, but somebody brought up a very valiant point years ago in the video comment section, like, hey, you drop optics, why aren't you dropping weapon lights? And I'm like, you're right. So I started doing that. Every 500 rounds, I went ahead and dropped the A model light. One thing I will say is the A model is a little more fragile than the B model. So I was a little concerned that it might at least pop off the gun. I wasn't worried about the light itself breaking, but I was concerned for the mounting system because I've seen it happen. But I went ahead and dropped it every 500 rounds. Here is your drops. 4 drops, no failures, just some significant damage, cosmetic as it is, to my bezel and the light itself. This is a great light. I can't really say any more than that. I know people are going to ask, well, if you could only have one, or they're going to say, how does it compare to? I don't do comparisons. The reason I don't do comparisons is because comparisons can be very, very subjective. Because even if we're looking at raw numbers, lights are different because they have different features, different attributes, different light temps, different candela, different so I'm going to say that there can be more than one good thing, and it comes down to which one do you want? Which one is going to meet your needs and fit your mission? A guy who's going to carry a concealed handgun may not be interested in X300 Ultra, even though it has more horsepower than, say, a TLR-7A. That's fine. But some of us want to carry as much light as possible. So the X300 Ultra is going to be something that we would consider, as well as some of the other lights that are out there or are coming soon. We got a lot of choices. We used to only have 2. When I first got into carrying a firearm for self-defense and carrying a firearm professionally, I had 2 serious light choices. And eventually we had 3 and 4. And now we have a bunch, and even some light choices that used to be kind of crap, and now they're kind of getting better. So it's a great time to be alive when it comes to weapon lights, guys. I will say that this is an excellent offering from Surefire. I'm glad to finally see it. Some people ask, well, you know, do you think the candela could have been higher? I'm sure it could have been. They could have gone rechargeable and really pushed that candela. But they want to stick with a disposable battery source that a lot of people rely on, a lot of people prefer for whatever reason. And even though that's not my main, I prefer rechargeables, honestly. I still don't mind disposables, and disposables are still very common for night vision, lambs, things like that. So if you're curious, is this light worth getting rid of the last generation? No. Just rotate your last generation lights to other guns or trade them off to your friends and get the turbos, because the turbos are excellent. I'm Eric Cal with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.